Welcome, everyone. I'm Patty Martell, supervising producer at CNBC and the co-host of Women in Wealth. This is a digital series where we talk about some of the biggest issues women face in the corporate world and explore ways in which women can be smarter investors, entrepreneurs, and take charge of their futures. Joining us today, we have a great interview. This is going to be a masterclass in breaking barriers and empowerment. Anjula Acharia is an investor, strategist, advisor, philanthropist. Her Rolodex includes A-list names in both media and technology. Let me bring her in. Anjula, welcome. And
Hi.
Seema Modi is going to be joining us in just a moment, but we'll get started.
Hi, Patty. How are
Hi,
you?
good. There she
Hi,
is.
everyone.
Oh, there's Seema. Hi.
Angela, thank you so much for doing this with us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh my God, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
And
Two
welcome
amazing
to
women.
Women in Wealth. Patty, great to see you.
Likewise, it's good to see you. It looks like you're in the newsroom.
I am, but excited to talk about someone who you and I have both tracked, who has an exceptional track record in the field of finance, technology, entertainment. And Angela, what's really fascinating about your career is you've been able to really blend all of those three sectors into one. And, I guess as we sort of help our audience get up to speed with your story, would love to just start with how you sort of broke out, which is really in the media and entertainment business.
Yeah, it's funny. People ask me this all the time. They're like, "Did you plan this? Was this a plan? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do?" And I moved to America, Silicon Valley, like 20 years ago, and I knew absolutely no one. I didn't go to business school here. I really had zero network. So when people say to me now, "You're so lucky with your network," I say, "You could have this network too. Like, you just have to kind of work at it." But I was lucky to be in Silicon Valley, where it is such a network community, right? They have all these like South Asian networking things. They have like media tech networking things, like literally any type of network you want to join, there's something there for you. So I really sort of got my foot in the door by just really going as a stranger to kind of all these networking events in Silicon Valley, and literally, I would find opportunities. I'd meet people, they would talk about things. I ended up founding a company that way. And it was just really like, connecting the dots, meeting people, and just seeing opportunities and kind of jumping on them.
That's one of the things about success. You talk about, all the time that you spend building and developing your network and your relationships. People always, kind of think about the top. They don't think about, the decades that it took to get there and all the hard work that we put in, to get to where we are, right? It's not an overnight process.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing, I think what's been really beautiful about my career, and I guess I've been really lucky, is just that I've never been a planner, and I feel terrible saying that because when you're a startup founder, and I deal with them so much, like the first thing I asked Payal Kadakia when she was building ClassPass, I was like, "What's your plan?" Right? And people ask, "What's your plan?" all the time. And as an investor, I ask people, "What's their plan? What's their plan to revenue? What's their plan to profitability? What's their plan to growth?" And but I, in my career, have really never been a planner. I'm just one of those people that just look for opportunities and connect the dots, and make things happen for myself and other people in the process. So but I'd say what I have done though is, really taking the time to talk to people, really taking the time to understand what they're doing, what's interesting to them, and being just very innately curious about what other people are working on and what they're doing. And that takes time. Like, I think a lot of people go into networking and they think they're going to get something straight away, and that's just not how it is. And I always say you should approach networking not actually thinking about what you need, but how can you be helpful to the other person, and then they value you. Because if you can show value to them immediately, they'll always come back to you for stuff because you've shown them value. So I always say networking is not about what someone can do for you, it's about what you can do for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not a one-way street, right? But let's start about where you started and what kind of helped you break out. Would you say it's really been managing Priyanka Chopra, launching her career not just across India, but then bringing her to the US and making her a big success story?
I would actually say my breakout was before that, because I founded a company called Desi Hits, which was a platform for content from east to west, so Bollywood meets Hollywood content. And thanks to one of my early investors and mentors, Jimmy Iovine, he was really instrumental in opening up the whole entertainment world for me. I took Lady Gaga to India. I worked on Britney Spears. I took 50 Cent to India. I took Enrique Iglesias to India. So I started working very deeply in pop culture and really helping talent, explore untapped markets and help them expand their strategies beyond, countries that were just kind of logical for them, whether that would be Europe and the US. So I really started opening up Asia for a lot of talent. And I think that really that was really kind of my breakout, if I think about it. I mean, I took Lady Gaga to India and broke her there. I really think that was like where I kind of really broke out.
Because it's not easy, right? Taking a major artist from America and bringing them to an emerging market like India, trying to understand how to market that individual, what's the best venue for them to play at, how do you make the most money when they're overseas. I'm sure it takes sort of a strategy, right, to build around this person.
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, it's funny, when I first I met Gaga's management, and actually through Jimmy Iovine, because she was signed to Interscope Records at the time. And a lot of people were like, "You're crazy! Don't take Lady Gaga to India. She wears meat dresses, in a country that is largely vegetarian. She's at the time, there were no gay and lesbian rights in the country, and she was, obviously a champion for that community. And a lot of people were just like, she's too risque. Like, why would you want to take her out there? They're going to reject her. It's going to be really problematic." And I worked with her and her team on what our story was going to be for that market, how we're going to take what was authentically hers, which was at that time was very much a love for food, a love for family. She was religious. She grew up in a home of faith, and all of those things being very important to, a lot of families in India. So the localization strategy of Lady Gaga was a strategy. It was like, how do we build a story that's truly authentic to her, and how do we take her and make, and really sort of make her something in India and South Asia. So yeah, there was a lot of strategy behind it. I had a lot of naysayers. I had a lot of people that were telling me it would never work from a business standpoint. She wouldn't make money out there. She would be rejected. The press would hate her, all those things. And I think that for me, I'm always really challenged when people say that to me and they say, that will never work. It was like when I brought Priyanka to America, everybody said, like, a Bollywood actress has never crossed over. There's an accent issue. There's like a cultural issue. Bollywood is so different, like all those things. And I was like, I did it one way, I need to do it the other way. So there's always a strategy involved. There's always, really thinking about global storytelling and how things translate and how you localize things. There's a big part to that.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, like, Lady Gaga is, like you said, she can be, she's provocative. She definitely polarizing. She pushes the envelope. What made you think that she would be embraced?
I didn't know if she would.
That's definitely risky. I mean, right? Like, now looking back, do you see that as taking a risk?
Yeah, for sure. And I put my name on it, right? So I was the one taking it. So it was a risk for me with my reputation with her and her team, who are amazing. And it was a risk for me with my reputation in India, where I was growing a company and, growing a network there myself. So yeah, it definitely was. But, I've never been one to shy away from a risk. Like, I want to do things that other people just wouldn't dream of doing, or I want to do things that people think are impossible. And I love trying to, trying to do the impossible, I suppose. So it's just, I guess, my character and my innate sort of like desire to do that.
To believe in yourself, right? And I think that the lesson there, and I think even, for us, Seema, as we were kind of getting this project off the ground, is to believe that, follow your gut, that you are doing and creating something that resonates, and that, people are open to and are going to want to see and are going to be interested in. Right.
So it's interesting, right? Sometimes you have the vision and others may not have it yet, but like, if you can build that and share that vision with them, and conceptualize it and get people on board, then that's success. That's beauty.
But you have to believe it first, right? I think that's the bottom line. Like I think you really have to believe it for, not just kind of think it, if you want to be successful in something and doing something that hasn't been done before.
Well, then let's talk about that with Priyanka. Ange, what were you able to do when you went to Hollywood, when you went to California to talk to people across LA? What was their response when you said, this is someone who is not just going to be a supporting role, she's going to be a star in Hollywood?
I had two things I want to say. One, I had so much pressure, right? Because Priyanka was definitely not coming here to be like a sidekick. She was a leading lady in India. She was literally at the top of her game in India, in Bollywood, Hindi film industry. Like, for me to bring her here, it definitely couldn't be like to play like a sidekick role of something. You know what I mean? She didn't give up a huge career there to come here to do that. So I had like a huge, immense amount of pressure when I convinced her to come to America with me and try this. And like she'd said to me, well, it hasn't succeeded with anybody else, so why do you think it's going to succeed with me? And I don't know, I just saw something so incredibly different in her. I've always found, there's a lot to say about Priyanka, but the key thing I think when I first saw her was she just had this kind of really I don't know, like she had an Eastern and very Western sensibility, which was so balanced with her and so effortless in the way she expressed herself. She could dance to hip hop, she could dance to Bollywood. Like, she just had this coolness about her that I hadn't really seen in anyone. But I think the thing that, going back to Patty's point about belief and everything. So at that time, Jimmy Iovine was my biggest investor and my mentor. And he was someone who had done the impossible so many times. And when I told him about people laughing at me about bringing Priyanka to America, he said to me, do you think people didn't laugh at me when I wanted to sign the first white rapper? He goes, when I signed Eminem, he said, a lot of people laughed at me and told me I didn't know what I was doing. And he goes, so bringing a Bollywood star to America, what's the big deal? And I think having someone like that who'd broken so many barriers as your mentor was really just really made me feel like I was invincible and I could do anything because I had him. He was an investor in the company and was very much, my mentor at the time. So yeah, I just kind of felt like I could do anything because I had someone like him who had done so many different things, broken everyone from kind of Lady Gaga to 50 Cent to Eminem to going back as far as like The Clash and U2,
Time as a manager then has led to time as an investor. What are you seeing across the media landscape? We heard today from Disney CEO Bob Iger, who talked about job cuts, but also talked about how they're increasing their spend on streaming. That really seems to be where every major company is spending money.
Yeah, look, I think it's super interesting. I mean, there's a big saturation, right, in the streaming services that we're seeing. So I think at some point we're going to see a lot of those companies come together in somewhere or another. I think there's going to be acquisitions. I think I think right now it's incredibly saturated. But going back to kind of my background in India and America, I think what's super interesting is the international market. I mean, really seeing Netflix go after that international market. I mean, Netflix is kind of like on the back foot in many ways in terms of, they don't have like this other business that is like, really sort of is driving their content business and the high cost of content. And they don't have the catalogs, that someone like Disney or, Paramount or some of the other streaming services have. So I think ultimately, like, they're kind of on the back foot, but they're on the front foot when it comes to international. I think it's about 70% of their business is international. So I think the international market is going to be super interesting. I think it's super interesting times in that.
How do you, when you advise Priyanka as far as projects or opportunities, do you think both of those, I mean, like film and streaming, do you think of those platforms on the same level now?
Do you know, it's funny, I never did pre-pandemic, but post-pandemic, I'm seeing them more and more. And so many, I mean, we're producing a movie with Mindy Kaling, Priyanka and I, and that movie is going to release on a streaming service, and I just realized I don't know if I was allowed to say which one it is. But first we were very much about theatrical pre-pandemic, and then post-pandemic it was like this conversation shifted to streaming. And I think that people, I mean, I just saw something out today where, I think it was AMC or one of the big theaters talking about just really difficult to get people in those seats, and people are still very much at home, and things are so available now, streaming, that, people aren't as incentivized, right, to go to the movie theaters. So I think as just culture shifts post-pandemic, I definitely kind of see it more now. It's always nice to get theatrical. Like, she has a movie coming out called Love Again. It's a Screen Gems movie, a Sony Screen Gems movie, and it is going theatrical, which is great. So it's always nice to have that. But I think the numbers really are in streaming now.
Okay, but wait, sorry, Seema, before we move on, we just have to go back, because Anjula, we have to do another episode with you and Priyanka and Mindy and us, because that would be amazing. I think I would love also to hear from them, their perspective, and as far as media, and Mindy is such a prolific producer. Yeah,
Powerful.
Both of them powerful. So we're going to circle back with that request for you.
Okay.
Speaking of Mindy, I mean, even beyond Priyanka, you've played a pivotal role in sort of trying to boost diversity across different shows, from Bridgerton to Never Have I Ever. When you look at the pipeline, what does diversity look like going forward? Is it going to improve?
I definitely think so. I think it's just a real story of inclusivity. And what is so amazing is that, as I see more and more opportunities for Priyanka, and I see roles for Priyanka, it's really not about your story being Indian or being diverse, right? It's just, you can just go and play a character, and it really doesn't matter. And we're seeing a lot of blind casting, which I love seeing. I mean, I still think with like Bridgerton, for example, there was a backstory to these girls being Indian. What's super exciting to me is when we don't even have that, where there's no explanation of why someone's Indian, or why they're, African American, or why they're Egyptian, or why they're something, right? It's just like they're playing that role and they're playing that character, and it doesn't have to be explained. And that's really something that I think is incredibly exciting. And I do think that more and more roles are opening up. And what's also so interesting is, when you look at the people running the studios, you've got Jen Solke, who's, really bet on Priyanka for Citadel and for, other stuff that she's working on. And then there's Bella, who's really been Bella Acharia at Netflix, who's now the new chief content officer. Again, really driving the international agenda, really driving diversity. She's greenlit a lot of Mindy's stuff. So I really think that people that are sitting at the head of the studios are making these really kind of inclusive decisions, and really thinking about diversity and women, I mean, parity of pay, all those types of things are really becoming at the forefront of conversations, which is amazing.
Well, and you think about, very successful actresses like Reese Witherspoon, who has a very successful production company, right? Like, I think the perception was that you couldn't bet on a female actress to carry a movie or a series, and that's not the case anymore.
Right. And that what's so brilliant, actually, Priyanka and I were just talking about this yesterday. What's so brilliant about it is that it's women like her and women like Reese, and, that are just really driving their own path, right? If you're not going to give me the role, I'll make it myself. It's really that kind of attitude. If you don't believe in me, I'll show you, and I think that's where we've really kind of broken out, and we're telling a new story, because we're not sitting around waiting for, a man to give us a role at a studio or whatever. We'll make our own, we'll create our own content. We'll write our own scripts. We'll do our own thing.
Right. That's the power of representation, right? You need to see yourself represented. It just, someone else has said that. And when I heard it, it just was like a light bulb over my head. I thought, yes, it's so powerful. And whether it's in your company or in media, you need to see people that look like you, because you ultimately need to see that, that someone like you fits in leadership, or even in the company.
Well, I also think just in that it really goes down to diverse writers, right? A diverse writers room. As I've been really and lots of things I've been doing is really championing writers, because what happened before is we had people that were not of our ethnicity writing storylines for us. So then when we watched them, we were like, that makes no sense. Like, we wouldn't do that. And I think that's where, the power really is when you have diversity across the entire industry, not just in front of the screen, but behind the screen too.
So, Ange, beyond media, when did you decide to go from manager to then investor? I mean, I'm looking at a portfolio of your companies. You have Olipop, ClassPass, all sorts of different companies that you now either you're on the board of BuzzFeed. When did you decide to sort of make that pivot, and what's it been like?
Yeah, to be honest with you, they were all happening at the same time. So I founded a company called Daisy Hits, which was a venture-backed media company. When I exited that, I actually went into venture capital straight away. And at that time, I was in venture capital working for Trinity Ventures. I was managing Priyanka as my side hustle, I guess, and waiting for her to pop, because I knew she was going to, and I believed in that. But I had always been working in tandem on those things, and so yeah, it wasn't kind of ever an either or. It was just like I was doing both at the same time.
A lot of people close to you have told me that you have great negotiating power. So I'd love for those who are watching, how do you negotiate the best contracts for your clients? What's the secret?
Yeah, it's really understanding the deep need of your client. So, and I don't mean the deep need of Priyanka. It's like if I'm negotiating with a studio for her, it's really to understand what the studio wants, and then to really figure out how she can serve that need. And then knowing that she can serve that need, like going and getting the best deal for that. So it's really, I think negotiating for me is really very much about, I don't want to call them the opposition, but looking at my opposition and really figuring out what they need. So I know how to sell to them. And I know once I know what they really need, I know that there's a price attached to that, because that's their deep need. So really just delivering on the needs of my client or the opposing person that I'm working with. I think when a lot of people negotiate, they're thinking about, what do I need, right? What price do I need? What have I got? It's all about me. It's similar to what I was saying about networking. Figure out what the other person needs first, because once you can figure out what they need, like, you're in a much stronger position.
Jumping off of that question, you have a track record. You're a proven entrepreneur. You're successful. You're respected.
Thank you, Patty.
How do you? And I think this is not necessarily easy for all women. Like, how do you own and use that power?
Someone told me something really amazing at the beginning of my fundraising journey. So I've raised a lot of money for myself and for many women, many women. And there was a guy, I'm going to name him Steve Ashkenazi. And he gave me this amazing piece of advice. And he said, if you want money, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for money. I have never forgotten that. I have not seen that man since then. I've never spoken to him again. But I just remember like really understanding that. And I really think that, see, when you're asking for advice, you're not just saying, hey, how do I do this? You're explaining your vision to someone, right? You're inspiring them about your journey. Like I always say, money raising is about getting someone so inspired about your journey that they want to be on it with you, and they want to give you money, and they want to see it come to life, because they're invested in it, not just, with their money, but emotionally. But you've got to inspire that investment from them. So I think that when you ask for advice, you're asking somebody to really come along on the journey with you, and you're getting their investment in their emotion and their time. And if they believe in and you inspire them, then you'll get money. And it works for me every time, by the way. I never ask for money. I always have an idea or a venture or whatever, and I'll just go and talk to people about it. And invariably they offer to give me money.
And that probably translates also to when you are talking to your boss, right? And selling yourself, because ultimately, we are our own kind of businesses, and we should manage ourselves like a business, right? And that probably translates well also when you are going in and asking for a promotion, or you're asking for a raise.
Again, it's like meeting the needs of your boss, right? It's like, what does your boss need? Like, what are the holes that you're filling for your boss that he or she isn't it hilarious how I just said he, by the way?
Mhm.
See, it's just like, it's ingrained. But yes, your boss, he or she or they, figure out what their needs are, fill the gaps for them, like make yourself indispensable. And if you can go in and you're negotiating and you know exactly what, makes you indispensable because of their needs, not yours, then you can really play to that. So I think it's really about understanding your opposition. In this case, it would be your boss. What do they need from you? And how can you deliver that? And how can you make yourself indispensable so that they need to give it to you?
Mhm.
Such great advice. I love
Mhm.
that because it's very easy to go into those discussions saying, I want X%
I
more,
need,
or
yeah,
to focus more on what you need, right? Versus what can I do for you
yeah.
and how can I help the brand grow, prosper.
Mhm. Right. And
Or
sell
even to
yourself.
go,
Right.
Love that.
right, or even to go in and say, I see these holes in our business. I see that you need someone to do this. I see that, we have an opportunity to grow this area of the brand. I see, you know what I mean? And I can do that, right? Rather than going, hey, I need a pay rise because I've got a
Mhm.
mortgage to pay and I've got this and I've got that. And
Inflation.
right, I need these things. No one cares what you need. That's the
No.
sad thing about it. It's funny, whenever I coach people in business, I always say, like, know your numbers, know what your client needs, know what their weaknesses are. Like, don't go in there and be like, I can do this and I can do that and da 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 da. It's not an I story, it's a we story, or it's a them story.
Mhm. Back to media. Sorry, Seema. Back to media, because we have been talking a lot about AI this week, and everybody trying to figure out how it's going to be incorporated. Entertainment is going to be one of the big uses, and I'm wondering how you think about it as someone who's managing someone's career, how about ways to use it, the value that it adds. Like, how do you think about it?
I think, it's interesting. I think, I've been speaking to a lot of people about this, obviously, and it's scaring people to death, right? They're like, I will be relevant, I will be needed, like AI is going to take over everything. And, I have some of those fears too. But what I do also think about AI is how we can just achieve our goals so much faster, how we can create things so much faster, how a lot of the work that we don't want to do can be outsourced. So in my mind, like, I think, AI could be such an incredibly valuable tool. And like I said, we can just like accomplish things much, much faster than we do without it. So I think I always go back to this one thing, however, is behind all of these things, we have to think about, is it a diverse group of people that's programming, coding, and creating this? Because if AI is making decisions and it's all created by, white men, then there's going to be a bias in that tool, right? So I always think about really going far back and thinking about what's the creation of that. So that's the thing that worries me a little bit.
No, it's a great point. I feel like we're not talking about that enough, right? Because these cutting edge technologies, they just grow so fast that there can be errors and biases that we don't even think about.
Mhm.
Angela, we're entering the end of our session here, but I want to end with you just sort of providing your big takeaway, your big piece of advice to women out there.
So I think my advice to women is always the same. It's like, think really big. I think we're never taught to think big. We're always taught from such a young age to keep our dresses down, not let anyone see up our skirts, not climb up the climbing frame. Reshma Sajani talks about this a lot in her book, Brave Not Perfect. But I think it's always a case of we are taught to play it safe. And I just think, and boys aren't. They're like, go to the top of the climbing frame, fall down. If you break your leg, it's okay. It will be fixed. Like, we're just not taught to think big and take risks. And I think my advice to women is always think big and take risks. Like, obviously take calculated risks. Don't do anything that's going to make you homeless or anything like that. But just think really, really big and be willing to, to dare to dream. I think that's my advice.
And you said one other thing that I had read about when you talked about turning off that little voice in your head, that little voice of doubt and second guessing, which I think is will get you sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, look, we're around people all the time that are giving us their opinions. We're reading the news, we're watching TV shows, we're constantly taking in so much information. We're on social, And what we don't realize is that all these voices are conditioning us and giving us a viewpoint, right? It's why whenever I read the news, sometimes it can be super depressing what's happening in the world. I always make sure that I double that with positive content. So if I read something that's really sad and depressing, I like to go away and read something double that amount in something positive, so that I'm always getting a positive frame of mind coming back into my mind. But I think that there's so much that we consume that we don't even realize that, makes us negative and doubt. And, there's that voice in our head that says we can't do it, or we're not capable, or, we're not good enough, or whatever it is. And I just think, you just got to really know that that's actually not your voice and eliminate that. I always say, consider it to be like someone that's driving in the car with you. So you're driving and you're driving forward, but there's this voice, it's your doubts, whatever. They're in the car driving with you, telling you these things, but you can tell them to shut up. You can say, hey, you're in the car, you're just a passenger, you're not driving, and I can choose to listen to you or not.
That's great advice. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
It was a great conversation.
This was amazing.
This interview and all of the other interviews that we have done are on our website, cnbc.com/women and wealth. You can go there, see this one and all the other great conversations that we have had for Women and Wealth. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anjula and Sima. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.